Hi friends, Ashley from Wildwoods&Homestead. We have been spending every day hauling firewood out of the Canadian bush. This is new for us. We have been using an off-grid wood burner to heat our house and our water. It runs our forced air as well as our in-floor heat. And we've been doing that for about 5 years now. But this year, we got our outdoor shop online and we're using the wood burner to heat that as well as our Wallapini greenhouse. And it has taken so much more firewood than we thought that it would. So this is new to us. I have mentioned before in my videos how I really like this idea of being tied to the seasons. However, we just really aren't there yet. We are in November and we have a ton of snow on the ground, and that makes getting firewood exponentially harder. Something else that makes it harder is that we have had to expand from harvesting firewood from our acreage to going out into Crown land. And for my US viewers, Crown land is just public land, and all you have to do is get a permit to harvest dead standing firewood. And what we have found is that it's best for us to be harvesting spruce and tamarack because of the high resin content. We need a good hot fire to be heating these extra spaces. So I mentioned that last year, leading up to this point, we had only been heating our house and our hot water. So we already had an idea of how much wood we needed for our winter. This year, we had no idea. Now, this also brings me to this concept of being tied to the seasons. Realistically, we would have loved to have this chore done in probably October, maybe even bleeding into early November. We also had the harvest of the garden, so it's really difficult to do such a huge task of how many cords of wood that we need, getting all of that in, and harvesting. So I'm still trying to figure out how to do that, how that should look for us if I'm putting away produce that I can freeze maybe and then can later, or just getting more efficient in how I can so that then I can switch over to helping Jeff with the firewood. This year, we are doing a lot of catch up, and that's just because we do everything ourselves. You know, everybody knows that you could go and hire someone to, fix your plumbing or build your house, or even you could pay for firewood, I guess, or you could pay for propane, which for us, it's extremely expensive. And, you can work a job that pays for those things, or, you can do a job where you make less and you end up doing those things yourself, learning to do those things on your own, which is the choice that we are making. And it does seem a little bit overwhelming right now, but that's only because we're still learning a lot. There's a huge learning curve, and we're gonna make a lot of mistakes. And we're gonna, not get things done in time because, for example, we had the thermostat on our furnace break. And because Jeff has converted our furnace to heat off of our wood burner, we don't need this expensive thermostat. And he figured out how to fix it himself with a simpler option that just simply all we have to do is tell our furnace to turn on or turn off. It doesn't need to be this, fancy high efficiency thing because we're not using propane for it. So, but in needing to do that, in fixing that himself, it also put us off being able to do firewood. It saved us a lot of money. Same with finishing, building the shop and building the greenhouse. All of that has been us building it, but that just meant that we couldn't be doing firewood. So now we're really in this kind of catch-up phase, and what's motivating me and what's helping me not to get discouraged is to know that this year is an anomaly. We're still figuring this out. We're figuring out how much does it take to heat this space? How much does it take to heat the greenhouse so that we can actually continue to grow food? Also, just finding more efficient ways to do things. So, for example, we are finding a huge amount of heat loss in the roof of the greenhouse because all we have is a sheet of greenhouse plastic. So we are going to put another sheet of plastic in to create dead airspace, and that way we're not losing so much heat, and that's going to make a huge difference in how much firewood that we burn. We also need to seal in the edges of the greenhouse. We've got a bunch of weeds and things growing in there, and we just weren't able to get to that before we had snowfall. So all of these things are going to make these spaces a lot more efficient, but we just aren't there yet. So a lot of it just feels like catch up. I'll just chat a little bit. I've got my worm farm in here, and my worms are doing so good, and they're making me all this like lovely soil that I'm going to use to top up these beds. I will get back to the greenhouse and all of these huckleberry bushes that I still need to harvest out. But when I filmed this video, I sort of just filmed it over the course of a week. And something that I do every morning is I go and I look at my little thermostat there on my windowsill, and I just see how cold the greenhouse is. That day, it was actually pretty cold. It was 55 Fahrenheit. But since I have filmed this, we have been able to keep it 65. Once we can seal it in, once we can get the second roof, plastic on there that I had just mentioned a little bit ago, we're hoping to keep it about 75. So I know it looks like all of this is such difficult work, and somebody watching this might say like, there are better ways to live maybe. And there could be, I suppose, but anytime you start something, anytime you build something from scratch, it's going to be difficult. And I think too, when you are faced with something difficult, the struggle just helps you to find better ways of doing things. And this time next year, we're going to be so much quicker with a lot of this stuff. We're already going to have things experience to fall back on, whereas we don't really have a whole lot of that experience yet. We're still coming out of building an entire house and being, Jeff was essentially the contractor, and he and his dad were the sub-trades, and then, they built the entire shop and the greenhouse and all of those things. So we're coming out of learning all of that. And it sometimes does feel like, oh, we're behind. But when I take a step back, I actually see that we're not behind. It's just a little bit harder when you are making that decision to make less of an income, but be the one to do all of those things that you might otherwise hire out. I did want to share at some point the perspective of firewood, because when we sat down to figure it out how much we were saving, it was close to $8,000 to $10,000 a year. So this year, as we're doing firewood, it does feel, difficult. It feels heavy. It feels like, oh, why are we doing this? This is really difficult. But when you sit down and figure out the financial aspect of it, it really just helps to motivate you, and it helps to kind of see that there's a benefit in doing it. And it also is just the first year that we're doing it like this. So it's going to feel harder. I also was just bringing you guys along as Jeff was digging out the snow plow, and that's another thing. We had this huge snowfall, and normally he likes to, do maintenance on the plow, do maintenance on the side-by-side, get all of that winter ready, and this year he didn't. So the plow had just been sitting there all summer, and then we got this huge snowfall, so he had to burn it out of the snow and try to fix it, and it was just this frustrating, more difficult than it needed to be task. But it's just like that because, again, we are just, we're doing all of it ourselves, and that's a choice that we've made, which means that sometimes things kind of pile up on each other. But we are getting to a place where I feel like the tasks are sort of, smoothing out and becoming more predictable. When I walked into the greenhouse this day, I just showed you how snowy it was outside, and it was really cold. And walking in here in all of my winter gear and then harvesting these huckleberries, it was just unreal. I felt like I was just in this little tropical little, paradise or something like that. And it was the strangest thing to have the snow all around me and to be, in my boots and all that stuff, and yet in the snow just, sort of melting off of me as I was working and harvesting out these huckleberries. I had mentioned in one of my other videos too that we weren't really sure what we were going to do about water, because we do have to reverse osmosis our water since our well is so high in sodium. And actually, we are now having too much water because we built a drainage system under all of those beds that goes to a sump pump in the corner. So for right now, what I'm doing is I'm just pumping the water from the sump pump, and then I'm watering all of the beds with that. And so far, that seems to be working really well. We just need to organize the system, because also looks. I like when things look tidy, and right now nothing looks tidy, and it's just driving me nuts. But I know that we will get there. Once we get it all fixed up, we will get to where we can get everything nice and tidy. And that just helps like the mental state so much for me anyway. I'm also just showing these huckleberries, and I gotta say, when I first tasted them, I was so disappointed. I did not enjoy the flavor, but I think I found a way to eat them where I enjoy them. And I've tried this two ways. I put them in a pot with a little bit of water, and I have sweetened it with honey, and I really liked that. But this time I decided to try it with a little bit of organic sugar. And I have found that it's like rhubarb. It needs to be mixed with quite a bit of sweetener to really pull out that nice flavor of the huckleberries, and it needs the sweetness because they have no sweetness to them. They're not like a blueberry or something. And I also find, I was just showing that I was really mashing it up. You want to mash up those huckleberries so they're all mashed. You never want to like get a whole huckleberry in your mouth and then bite into it, because it's just really gross. It needs to mix in with all of that, all of the sweetener. So that was what I did. I just put those huckleberries in that pan. I also put in some Saskatoon berries that we had harvested from our acreage in August. And then I put a little bit of water and about a cup of sugar. I don't remember. I think I might have had like 5 cups of berries in there, and then about a cup of sugar, and then I just kept simmering it down until it got nice and thick. And then I'm just sharing a meal, because this is the homestead part. Okay, so like the beginning of the video, that's the Wildwoods part, and I feel like I'm kind of coming up with this kind of format where I'm sharing the Wildwoods and the homestead. And here's the homestead, and it's just really simple. I have been so tired doing firewood and haven't had a whole lot of time for creativity or imagination or something, but I still love good food, and sometimes it's just nice to have a really nice meal. And I found this really simple way to do mashed potatoes, and so I thought I would just share it. I just showed there that I was mashing up my potatoes, and I just melted some butter with some heavy cream and mixed that into my potatoes along with a couple of crushed cloves of garlic, and then mixed all that together. Lots of butter, lots of salt, and they were so delicious. And then here is the huckleberry. I don't even know what to call it. Once it sat up in the fridge, it did become nice and thick, where you could probably spread it on toast or maybe put it on some oatmeal or something like that. My daughter made a cheesecake on this night. She had made it the day before, and we had it in the fridge, so we ended up just topping our cheesecake with it. And then I love getting those large, either like pork roast or beef from Costco, and I'll divide it into thirds. I'll cook the entire thing and divide it into thirds. And then throughout the week, I'm just doing different things with it, like putting it in a stir fry, or when we were eating sourdough, I would shred it and mix it with some barbecue sauce and make sandwiches. For this night, all I did was I put my leftover roast in the oven to bake while I was making the mashed potatoes and the huckleberry sauce there. And I just made sure I had enough butter in there, because, butter on anything is delicious, with some sauteed onions. And then pulled that out, cut up the pork roast, had our potatoes, some sauerkraut, and that sauce. Normally I make our sauerkraut, but I haven't been able to source cabbages, so I've just been buying some sauerkraut from Costco, and that's been nice and convenient. And then here is the huckleberry sauce on my daughter's cheesecake, and I do plan to share this recipe soon.